My name is Denise Holloway, and I am 65. Just last week, I signed away the business that had defined my life for more than 40 years. It began as a small hotel my late husband and I ran together. A labor of love built on sleepless nights, tireless effort, and countless sacrifices. Over the decades, it blossomed into a respected hotel chain, something far beyond anything I could have imagined. And now, after selling it for $47 million, everyone insisted it was time to relax, to celebrate, to finally enjoy life. That evening, I arranged a dinner at one of the city's finest restaurants, inviting my daughter Rachel and her husband, David. The tables were draped in thick white linens, crystal glasses shimmered under soft candlelight, and music floated through the air like a delicate secret. It should have been a night of joy, a celebration of my lifetime of work. Rachel looked radiant in a navy dress I had given her last year. At 38, she carried the same sparkle I remembered from her childhood, though I clung to that memory as a comforting illusion. David sat beside her, polished and charming, the kind of man who could close deals with a smile. Champagne flutes raised, they toasted my success. "To everything you've built, Mom," Rachel said warmly. "You deserve it all." I sipped cranberry juice. My doctor had forbidden alcohol because of my blood pressure, so I felt a quiet sense of pride. Then my phone buzzed. It was Linda, my longtime attorney, confirming the final signatures on the sale contracts. I excused myself and stepped into the lobby for better reception. The call was brief, barely a minute. When I returned, Rachel and David were leaning close together, whispering, their conversation halting the instant I approached. "Everything okay?" I asked lightly. "Of course, Mom," Rachel replied, her smile polite but her eyes cold. I reached for my glass, and that's when I saw it, a faint, strange residue swirling at the bottom, as if something had been dissolved into the juice. My hand froze, then I set the glass down. Something was wrong. Deep inside, I knew it. We walked to the valet, Rachel and David a few steps behind. The night air was cool, and for a brief moment I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just pulp or a poorly rinsed glass. But at the car, the uncertainty vanished. A soft knock at the window drew my attention. Anthony, our waiter, leaned in, pale and hesitant. "Mrs. Holloway," he whispered, glancing nervously around. "Forgive me, but there's something you need to know." My stomach tightened. "What is it, Anthony?" I asked. "When you stepped away," he said, voice low, "I saw your daughter pour a small vial of white powder into your glass while her husband watched." He handed me a sealed bag containing the untouched glass. "I thought you might want to have it tested." My hands trembled as I took it. "Thank you," I whispered. "You may have saved my life tonight." As Anthony disappeared into the shadows, I sat in silence, heart pounding. The daughter I had raised, my only child, might have tried to kill me. Shock gave way to something sharper, colder, a fierce, unyielding resolve. This was only the beginning. The morning after that night, I could hardly sit still. My hands still shook when I held a cup of tea, and my mind raced through the images Anthony had described. Rachel, my own daughter, deliberately trying to end my life. It was almost impossible to believe, yet I knew better than to ignore evidence. I drove to a private lab on the outskirts of the city, a discreet place where questions were fewer than the answers money could buy. I handed over the sealed glass to the young technician, a man in wire-rimmed glasses with a calm, clinical demeanor. "I need a complete toxicology report," I said, firm and unwavering. "No delays." He studied me silently for a moment before nodding. "You'll have results by this afternoon," he said. That was enough. While waiting, I perched in a small cafe nearby, replaying Anthony's words like a haunting refrain. Rachel leaning over my glass, David keeping watch. Every detail vivid, every movement deliberate. Part of me screamed that it couldn't be true, that the daughter I had nurtured for decades would never betray me in such a monstrous way. But another part, the part that had run a business empire, knew the cold reality. Greed could drive people to unimaginable acts. By 3 p.m., my phone rang. The technician's voice was grave. "Mrs. Holloway, the sample contained propanol at a concentration high enough to be lethal to someone with heart conditions. Cardiac arrest, extreme hypotension. It was enough to stop your heart." My hands trembled as I thanked him, my voice barely steady. That evening I met with Linda in her office. Her oak-paneled walls, lined with law books, seemed to close in on me as she read the report in silence. "Propanol," she murmured. "A clever choice. Hard to detect, dangerous." She looked up, her eyes sharp. "Denise, we need to involve the authorities. With Anthony's testimony and this report, it's more than enough to arrest them." I shook my head slowly. Headlines, trials, my daughter branded a murderer in every newspaper, my husband's memory, our family's name, everything destroyed. "I can't," I said quietly. "Not yet, but I will make them face this, in a way they cannot escape." Linda studied me carefully. "You're planning something else?" "I'm going to ensure they understand the gravity of their actions," I said, my voice colder than even I expected. "They will never touch my life again. They'll be held accountable." 2 days later, we set the trap. Linda arranged a meeting under the guise of financial planning after the hotel sale. Rachel and David arrived, dressed sharply, their smiles polished and practiced. Rachel wore light blue, radiating false warmth. David's tie was perfectly knotted, his grin rehearsed. Linda and I sat across from them at the conference table, papers stacked neatly before us. "Mom, I hope you're feeling better," Rachel said, feigning concern. I smiled lightly, hiding the storm within. "Much better. Sleep works wonders." Rachel's eyes flickered with anticipation. Linda leaned in. "Denise has reconsidered the foundation plans," she announced. Rachel's lips curved with relief, but I let the silence hang just long enough before revealing the truth. I slid the lab report across the table. "Do you know what this is?" I asked softly. Rachel stared, her false composure faltering. David's color drained. "It's a toxicology report," I continued. "A test of the cranberry juice I almost drank at dinner. Lethal propanol, enough to stop my heart. Anthony saw it happen. He witnessed you, Rachel, pour it in while David watched." The room fell silent. I let them feel the weight of what they had done. For the first time, the calculated greed and desperation behind their smiles were laid bare. The days that followed the confrontation felt surreal. Rachel and David had vanished from my life as promised, leaving a silence both terrifying and liberating. For the first time in years, I could breathe without the shadow of betrayal pressing over me. And yet, grief lingered. Grief for the daughter I had lost, for the trust shattered, for the life I had built that had been threatened by greed. I poured that energy into the foundation. Every meeting, every phone call, every decision became a way to reclaim control, to transform pain into purpose. The Holloway Foundation would not be a memorial to betrayal. It would be proof that life could flourish even after deceit. The first site we visited was a rundown property near the city's heart, earmarked for our children's home. Concrete and weeds stretched across the lot, but in my mind, it was already alive. Laughter echoing through hallways, sunlight spilling across classrooms, and every child feeling safe and loved. I spent hours with the architects, insisting that every detail reflect warmth, safety, and opportunity. I would not let bureaucracy or cost cut corners. These children deserved the best. Meanwhile, the weight of Rachel and David's actions had begun to manifest in ways I could watch from afar. Linda kept me informed of their financial unraveling, debts mounting, creditors calling, desperate attempts to recover what they had lost. The smug arrogance that once defined them was replaced by fear, frustration, and humiliation. Justice did not always arrive with handcuffs. Sometimes it came in the quiet satisfaction of seeing greed collapse under its own weight. At the same time, I reached out to the students and staff supported by the foundation. Young researchers, scholarship recipients, and volunteers all had once been just names on paper. Now I met them, listened to their dreams, their fears, their ambitions. I guided them, mentored them, and in turn, they reminded me of why I had fought so hard to build something lasting. Each success, each smile, each breakthrough became a balm to the wound Rachel's betrayal had left. Evenings were still difficult. I would sit on the porch, tea in hand, replaying memories of my daughter, the little girl who once clutched my hand, the teenager who had leaned on my shoulder, the woman who had nearly destroyed me. But now that sorrow was accompanied by purpose. I was no longer a victim. I had become the architect of resilience. Weeks later, construction was well underway at the children's home. I walked the grounds each morning, feeling the walls rise where emptiness had once been. The laughter of workers and the sound of progress filled the spaces where fear had lingered. In those moments, I realized that reclaiming my life was not about revenge. It was about creating something beyond the reach of greed, beyond the reach of betrayal, and through it all, the image of Rachel's cold eyes served as a stark reminder. I had lost a daughter, yes, but I had not lost myself. The foundation, alive with promise and purpose, became my statement that love, generosity, and legacy could endure, even when blood ties failed. By the time the first classrooms were ready, I understood something essential. Pain could break you, but it could also teach you to rebuild stronger, wiser, and with a heart that refused to harden. Betrayal had been the spark, but action, vision, and compassion were the fire that forged the life I was now determined to lead. Months passed, each one shaping a life I thought had been irreparably fractured. The Holloway Foundation was no longer just a vision. It had become a living, breathing entity. The children's home buzzed with energy, laughter spilling down hallways, classrooms bright with curiosity, and volunteers guiding young minds with patience and warmth. The foundation's impact reached beyond the walls. Scholarships enabled college dreams, community programs nurtured struggling families, and research grants funded innovations in health and education. Every morning, I walked the grounds, observing the transformation of brick, concrete, and weeds into spaces of hope. Each decision I made, from selecting the books in the library to designing the playground, was a declaration that my life's work could no longer be tarnished by betrayal. Rachel and David's absence no longer haunted me. It was a void I had filled with purpose, action, and love for the children who now depended on me. Yet, the most profound change was yet to come. One crisp autumn morning, I received a call from a young woman named Emily Carter. She introduced herself as a medical researcher who had been awarded a grant from the foundation. Her voice trembled with excitement and nervousness as she invited me to visit her lab. Intrigued, I agreed, unaware that this meeting would reshape my understanding of family entirely. Emily met me at the entrance of the research building, her eyes bright with determination. Inside, microscopes, computers, and medical equipment hummed with purpose. She walked me through her work on regenerative cardiac tissue, explaining how her team used patients' own cells to repair damaged hearts. Her passion mirrored the ambition my husband and I once had when building the first Holloway Hotel, a desire to create something lasting and meaningful. Then, in her office, she hesitated, reaching into her desk to produce a photograph. My breath caught. It was a teenage girl holding a newborn, Rachel. I stared, unable to comprehend the truth Emily spoke. She was my granddaughter, a child I had never known existed. Rachel had given her up for adoption, and now, through fate and the foundation's work, our paths had finally crossed. Tears blurred my vision as I reached for her hands. Emily's warmth, her intelligence, and her kindness filled the void Rachel had left behind. For the first time in years, I felt hope bloom where grief had once taken root. This was family, not the daughter who had betrayed me, but a granddaughter who embodied values I cherished: compassion, resilience, and love. Together, we toured the children's home. Volunteers guided the children with gentle encouragement, classrooms buzzed with discovery, and the playground echoed with laughter. Emily shared the excitement of her latest medical breakthrough, clinical trials that could save thousands of lives. Pride swelled in me, and I realized that legacy is not measured by wealth, titles, or property. It is measured by the lives we touch, the hope we inspire, and the love we pass on. That evening, as I stood on the steps of the children's home, the golden sun setting behind us, I understood something vital. Betrayal had taken my daughter, but it had not taken my life, my purpose, or my capacity for joy. From the ashes of grief, I had built a foundation stronger than ever, and in Emily, I had discovered a gift I never expected, a chance to love, guide, and connect anew. Life had shattered me, but it had also remade me. I was Denise Holloway, survivor, visionary, grandmother, and custodian of hope. And in that truth, I found peace, fulfillment, and a legacy that could never be stolen.